Sagawakwazaste and the rest of the Seaway Valley. Good morning and welcome to a live edition of Sika on Wednesday to Watala. My name is Beverly Cook, and we're glad to be with you today. We'd like to let you know the original air date of the program live is on Wednesday. We have January 13th as the play date 2021. And we will remind you views and opinions expressed by our guests and our callers during Dedawatala, not necessarily those of 97.3 CKION or the Akwesasne Communication Society. And our phone lines are open. If you have any questions for Tribal Council, they will gladly address those. We do go through a presentation first where we cover a number of our agenda items outline-wise and summary-wise. And then following that, we will answer any questions that our community members have. Tribal Council will address those. So phone numbers here at the radio station are 518-358-3427 and 613-575-2101. And we appreciate everybody tuning in today. Also appreciate all of the hard work of Tribal Council and everything that goes into taking care of our community with all of the different programs and departments that everybody is working in conjunction with. And today's guests will include Siverage's Mohawk Tribal Chief, Michael Connors, also Siverage's Mohawk Tribal Chief, Beverly Cook, Siverage's Mohawk Tribal Chief, Eric Thompson, as well as Siverage's Mohawk Tribal Sub-Chief Benjamin Herne. So we're going to give a summary of this past Saturday's Tribal Monthly Meeting. And of course, we always promote the Tribal Portal, the Tribal Members Portal on the tribe's website, srmt-nsn.gov. So you can always access that. And if anybody has any trouble accessing that, we always point them to the communications department. They will gladly walk you through anything that you need to access with regards to the Tribal Members Portal. So with that, we're going to start off our presentation today with Tribal Chief Michael Connors, and we welcome you to the program. We hope everyone is well. Sago and welcome, Tribal Chief Michael Connors.
Good morning, Reen. Good morning, Akwesasne. We're happy to be here today sharing the monthly meeting from this past Saturday with the community today on the radio. We'll jump into a summary of this past Saturday's meeting. We opened it up with a moment of silence for the, I believe, five community members who we have lost to the COVID pandemic, plus everybody else who we have lost since our last meeting, since the last time we had met. And also a reminder for everybody to control the spread, control your internal family bubbles. Even though somebody may be in your house, they also have their own bubbles. You have your family bubble, but everybody else has their family bubbles, which opens up the risk for everybody involved. And we just want to remind everybody to control what can be controlled. The first item was new business. There were no previous action items from the previous monthly meeting in December. A few of the items and questions that popped up was a request to use Zoom also for the work sessions. We're not entertaining that right now. There's a Tribal Council resolution which suspended work sessions. So those are going to remain suspended for the time being. Actually, right now, documents are moving faster with an online document signature program that we have put in place in the last several months. Most items that were covered previously in work sessions are either on the portal now or are being uploaded. New sections are being added immediately to the portal, so everything will be available and transparent to our tribal members. And there was also a question about somebody having trouble accessing the portal. Anybody still with troubles accessing the portal can call the communications department for assistance at 518-358-2272, and they'll be able to walk our community members through logging on to the portal. So also there was a question about the new fire truck that the fire department debuted. The tribe covered that. The tribe paid that through the CARES Act funding. And the question was whether that was paid in one shot with one check or was financed. And that was paid in one shot. That was paid with cash, a check from the CARES Act funding. And also another question about the elders benefit. Has the tribe considered extending the elders benefit past the end of the pilot program, which ends June 30th this year, 2021? Our position is that the pilot program has been completely filled It's covered in its entirety, even though funding stopped this year with the pandemic and the stoppage of funding from the casino and other areas. And also since the start of it, the funding that was allocated to the pilot program was roughly half of the total. So the TGF was kicking in the other half, either through the Tribal General Fund, the Community Development Fund, or the Patent Fund. But we've found ways to completely fund it through the end of the pilot program. And right now, as of July 1st, there's no funding to keep it moving, keep it going after July 1st this year. We're always looking for avenues to keep it funded. And if we receive additional CARES Act funding in 2021, I think it's on the table for additional elders benefit disaster relief. But as of today, we can't bank on that funding. We have no guarantee of it. And that's just a sad reality of where we are with the pandemic we're in and the cash crunch that everybody's in. And that covered new business and the questions from new business. And I believe Chief Cook was going to cover the EOC update and vaccine update.
All right, again, that is Tribal Chief Michael Connors providing an update with regards to this past Saturday's Tribal Monthly meeting and new business that they covered. So we will now turn to Sibridge's Mohawk Tribal Chief, Beverly Cook, and she's going to hook us up with the Emergency Operations Center and Vaccine Rollout Update summary from this past Saturday's meeting. Sago, and welcome to the program, Tribal Chief Beverly Cook.
Sagorine, happy to be here. Not happy to be talking about the issues that we have at hand, but I think that the information will help people to plan for their activities or curtailing their activities, and provide some kind of hope that there's vaccine being rolled out and that we're working towards a resolution to this issue, though it may not be for many, many months until we're more free to move about. As of yesterday afternoon, the southern portion of the territory has currently 13 active cases, and there are 67 contacts, family, relatives, friends, 67 who are in quarantine right now and monitoring their symptoms. And so that gives us, altogether, we've had 103 positive cases. 90 have recovered, though I've been hearing more and more from people who have residual symptoms still that come and go. So we're wondering what that's going to turn out to be like for people. And we know on the Canadian side, we posted a joint notice to the public that they had 30 active cases, and they had experienced the four deaths that Chief Connors had mentioned, which is very unfortunate and sad. So I raised those numbers because if anybody listened to Dr. Kelly and Michael's presentation yesterday, you heard Dr. Kelly say that currently we're experiencing the post-Christmas surge. We aren't even in the middle of the New Year's Eve surge yet. And so I just wanted to explain to people that with Christmas being on the 25th, say you came in contact or a person came in contact with someone who was infected, the incubation period, the period of time from when you come into contact with the virus to when you start manifesting symptoms is generally 1 to 5 days, or within the first 5 days after your contact, but it could be the 2 to 14 days before you start manifesting symptoms. Once you start manifesting symptoms, you are most contagious within the first 5 days after becoming symptomatic, having the cough or the congestion or the runny nose or sore throat or fever, whatever your symptoms are. So now you're, let's see, now you're into the beginning of January, and we've already blown through New Year's, which we know many people had gatherings or parties, went out and celebrated New Year's Eve. And we all see on Snapchat and Instagram the pictures of people who are cheek to cheek, no mask on, having a good time, which is you don't want to take that away from people, but on the other hand, it's very dangerous activity at this point. So now we're seeing people who are manifesting symptoms from coming in contact from someone who got infected on Christmas. And now these people that are in quarantine very likely got infected during that Christmas span. And we've yet to see what happened, the full brunt of what came out of New Year's. So it's very important for people to stay home as much as possible, to limit their contacts outside of their household bubbles. And people might say, well, why don't you shut this down, or why don't you shut that down? I think that it goes without saying, you don't, at this point, we've been in this since March, we should automatically know what we need to be doing in order to curtail the numbers. The restaurants are still open. We're trusting that the minute that they have an incident or an exposure, that they're gonna close down. And if you've seen, Drex has shut their doors. I didn't look at the sign to see how long they were gonna be closed, but it was an immediate response to an exposure. So they're doing their part. People are still going and picking up curbside and takeout, and there are people who are doing indoor dining with, I would hope that it's family members and not people that are outside of their household bubble, because that's the idea. When you go out to eat, you're supposed to be eating with your household people, not somebody that's in a whole nother bubble, because you can't assume that everyone in their bubble is doing what they're supposed to be doing. So people just really need to think about the common sense of it, and what their activities are. There are people who are adamant that the only activity they've had is, they wear their mask, they run into Walmart, they run into Price Chopper or wherever, and then they go home and that's it. Or they do their whatever activity it is that they always have their mask on. The other person always has their mask on. And in believing that, the only explanation is that even wearing masks is not 100%. And they've said that from the beginning, that if everybody wore a mask, it would decrease the chance of infecting one another, but it wasn't ever going to be 100%. So you have to be brief in your encounters. You can't hang around with one another. It's got to be brief. Everybody has to have their mask on. You have to be more than 6 feet apart. And so I just wanted to reiterate those precautions and the self-awareness of where we are and who we're with, and what they're considering, what their exposures might be. So now we have, an increasing number of people. We did have testing this morning. It's on from 9 to noon or until their supplies run out. And then there will be testing again on the 19th and on the 26th. We've heard some talk about difficulty getting tested through Mountain Medical. And if anybody has any issues, they need to bring it to Health Services Director Mike Cook or the EOC to let them know that they're having problems accessing tests through Mountain Medical. There was also some talk of the vaccine, and just to briefly go over, there's been 300 doses of vaccine administered so far, and they've received 200 more. When you get the vaccine, your body begins to mount an immune response to the vaccine. And in about 10 to 14 days, your immunity is up around 50%, maybe a little bit more, but around 50%. And then when you get your booster, and for us, it would be the Moderna on 28 days later, then your immunity goes up to the over 90%. So you have to still continue to be careful. If the immunity that you get from the Moderna vaccine is 95%, yes, you still have to wear masks until we have a better handle on this, because there's that 5% that it doesn't cover. So you have to remember, this isn't 100% either, though it is going to afford immunity to most of the people. And just like the flu vaccine is not 100% either, but if you do get the flu, if you've had the vaccine, generally the bout of flu that you get is less severe than it would have been had you not received the vaccine. So they're hoping, and so far in their trials, that's how it's worked out. They haven't had anybody in I think it was 30,000 people that they participated in the clinical trial for Moderna. They didn't have anybody who got severe disease. And I think they might have had 11 out of the 30,000 that got some illness, but it was not a severe episode of COVID. So we're thinking that it's the same, very similar to getting the flu shot. They also, the priority list is healthcare, frontline workers, elders, are now able to sign up at senior citizens to be put on the list. And our elders are, for the vaccine, it's 65 and over. And then the high risk and chronic, people with chronic illnesses. So what I've heard Teresa, our family nurse practitioner, say is to call. And you may not be given anybody can call, and you may not be given an appointment immediately, but you'll be put on a list. And as the priorities change, your name will go up in the queue. And there's nothing to prevent you from calling back in to double check and see where you're at on the list, because we know that, since the vaccine has arrived here, more and more people are anxious to receive it. And as more and more people get sick, and now we're beginning to see deaths of, our elderly relatives, it's raising the anxiety in some of our population, some of our community members. And so they want to get vaccinated more quickly. And we wish we could, but this is an issue all across the United States. Is an issue of trying to deploy the vaccine. And lastly, there's a couple numbers that I wanted to put out there. If anybody is in quarantine and you don't have someone who can bring you groceries or food or essential supplies, you can call the Family Advocate, and their number is 518-358-3021, and they can bring supplies to you. Of course, if you have family members, and I've seen many people reaching out saying, if anybody needs anything, you want me to stop and get groceries for you or whatever, just let me know. So our community is really helping to take care of one another. But then there's that times when people are unavailable, are working, or can't get to it right away. And if you're in that situation, then the Family Advocate can help you out with that. And MCA just put out a notice as well for the northern portion, to call 800-480-4208 or 613-937-4322. And they have a community quarantine program on the northern portion. So if you live on the southern portion, contact the Family Advocate. If you're on the northern portion, then you can contact this number if you don't have anybody available to help you through the quarantine period. And I guess that's it I have for now.
All right, thank you again. That's Tribal Chief Beverly Cook providing us another update with regards to the EOC and the vaccine rollout update. You're listening to 97.3 CKOM from the heart of Akwesasne. My name is Reen Cook, and we are glad to be with you this morning. I am joined this hour by Tribal Chief Michael Connors, Tribal Chief Beverly Cook, Tribal Chief Eric Thompson, also Tribal Sub-Chief Benjamin Herne. We are continuing through our presentation. If you do have a question for Tribal Council, we will answer the questions for you at the end of our presentation. And I will let everybody know right off the bat, we're going to wrap up at 11:30 this morning, okay? So with that, we will turn now to Tribal Chief Eric Thompson, and he's going to provide us some information from the Mohawk Networks presentation that was done on Saturday at the Tribal Monthly Meeting. As we continue through your summary, we say Sego and welcome Tribal Chief Eric Thompson.
Sego Rin, Sego Akwesasne wat kwan walado, he was over the Humsedate, ni Chinahoda, Yugori Wasun, the Chinahoda, Yugoya, the Sarahawi, Yugwats Tarista. So I thank you for tuning in and listening to some of the work that we've been doing and for being interested enough to tune in to inform yourself on these matters. I'm going to be reviewing the presentation that was done by Allison Mitchell on Mohawk Networks. There's going to be an upgrade done on the system, the entire system, and on the network. So we're very fortunate to be in the position that we're in with regards to even having a network. A lot of the outlying areas or the surrounding areas are not as well positioned as Akwesasne is. And that's really due in part to past leadership and the vision that they had years ago with regards to pursuing this grant and pursuing the idea of bringing broadband access to Akwesasne. Since that time, broadband internet access has been a vital part of the economy in Akwesasne. And again, since the outbreak of the COVID pandemic, it really has proven itself to be almost I would say a necessity. The network was built in 2015, and we've experienced a high adoption rate. People have used it and are using it. Saturation in Akwesasne is almost, I have to think it's probably almost 100% at this point. The load that we're experiencing with the pandemic is really evident at times. I think at times there's been issues with sluggish reception and transfer rates and signals. But we're streaming 30% more than we were before the pandemic. We've added multiple devices in the home that previously were not all running at the same time. More people are in the home at the same time. So it's not unusual for me to be running Zoom now, and my kids are running Zoom in the other room online for classes. And then in the evening, any kind of streaming devices that are being used within the house as well. So the load is really heavy, and I think it's evident. I know our networks has certainly felt that. Networks address the current network strain by bringing up a third-party engineering team to perform a network assessment and ultimately to redesign our core network. Re-engineering was deemed to be an unviable option at that time. We were fortunate enough to be able to apply the CARES Act funding to it. It's really what made the entire initiative possible. But for the pandemic, the increase of use would not be felt. So the timeline for the implementation estimate would be 8 weeks. The next gen ISP will be immediately will immediately provide a higher level of availability and resiliency for all Mohawk Network customers while laying the foundation for a network that can scale as the digital needs of the community grows. So that's really an important aspect of this. The current network that exists was, if you think about it, there were additions that were put on to the current network. We started with a hub and then added on and then added on and then added on. And there were the way it was explained at the meeting, there were different engineering firms that handled that, which is not unusual in that area. What this network design will do is to incorporate and be able to scale to in a more uniform manner going forward, I believe. So that'll lend itself to efficiency and reliancy, durability going forward. So it's a really important aspect of the redesign. What it'll do is it'll add redundancy to minimize downtime, and the new design will segment the network into smaller, more manageable groups for troubleshooting and load balancing on the network. The new core is being built next to the existing equipment, and Networks is working hard to minimize any kind of downtime or any kind of disturbancy. Hopefully, the community won't even notice the transition. I think that's really what we're shooting for, and what Networks is shooting for. Any of the work that's going to be done will be done in the wee hours of the morning, I think, during the off times. And you know, they're doing a tremendous job over there providing these services. And as I said before, we're really utilizing a lot of these services so much more than we had in the past. And you know, it's very easy to take it for granted. You know, you're sitting and I find myself doing it, you know, I find my own self doing it, where you're waiting for something to stream online because it's dragging a couple of seconds. But, you know, a few years back, we would have been on dial-up, and it would have taken probably an entire evening to download what you know, we have access to. So it's just it's interesting how easily we become accustomed to that, and you know, we have a tendency to take that for granted. But it really is an essential service, and you know, they're doing a fantastic job with it. And you know, hopefully these upgrades, or I know these upgrades will be embraced by the community, and it will be. It's an investment in the infrastructure going forward in the future that you know, really can't be understated, because it's something that the network really needed. And you know, the current network's been in place for, I think, about 8 to 10 years. I think usually has been the span of time. You know, it's a double-edged sword. We're fortunate enough to be able to have the CARES Act funding to utilize that to replace the network and to engineer another network going forward. You know, it really, the technology moves in such a fast pace that we really needed to have this done. And the scalability of incorporating the scalability into the new network is going to enable us to, I think, proceed and phase into any other new technology that's coming forward in the future. So yeah, that's that encapsulates her presentation in a nutshell, which was much more in depth. And I encourage people to go to the portal and watch it for themselves because there's a lot of jargon in there that is beyond my ken. It's out of my wheelhouse, I think, on the technical end of things. But, you know, I think that it's a really interesting presentation. And it's something that I said, as I said, really touches and affects everybody in Akwesasne in this day and age. And it doesn't hurt to be up to date on what's happening and why with networks. So Yeah, go Tony Gawanika.
Yeah, well, again, that's Severage's Mohawk Tribal Chief, Eric Thompson, talking about the Mohawk Networks presentation that was done by Allison at this past Saturday's Tribal Monthly Meeting. Again, we're talking with Tribal Council and talking about the summary of this past Saturday's Tribal Monthly Meeting. So we appreciate their time today. Again, if you have any questions for Tribal Council, we'll gladly address those. You have to call the radio station to get those questions in at 518-358-3427, 613-575-2101. And we'll be glad to ask those questions as soon as we're done with today's presentation. I will let you know in advance, I'm going to close the program at 11:30 this morning. So if we do not get to all of the questions that have come in, I do get those to the communications department for Tribal Council, and they will pass them along so that Tribal Council knows that that question was asked by a community member. So as we continue, we're going to go with Severage's Mohawk Tribal Chief Benjamin Herne, and he's going to talk about the MMJ presentation, which was done by Owen Herne at this past Saturday's Tribal Monthly Meeting. Again, you're listening to Dedwatala, and this is the monthly update from the Severage's Mohawk Tribe. Sago and welcome, Tribal Sub-Chief Benjamin Herne.
Yes, Sago Reen, how are you?
Doing well.
Good to hear. So I'm going to kind of jump on what Eric was just saying too, that, you know, a lot of the information that's going to be provided was given by Owen at our tribal meeting, and that I really encourage our community to log on to the portal, check out his presentation. It's probably going to be a little bit more in depth, actually a lot more in depth than what I'm going to provide today, just, you know, from a legal perspective. But I also went into the recording earlier, and I just want to note that it's an hour and 10 minutes into the presentation where he actually starts the MMJ discussion points. So the other thing, the other component is that the presentation is actually on the portal as well for review. And that's what I'm going to go through really quick here. So it was titled Bulk Manufacturing Cannabis License for Medical Research. And Owen always does a fantastic job. He's an enrolled member here. He has his own law firm out in Buffalo, and we really appreciate his expertise, especially when it came to negotiating terms for MMJ. So the need for it was, you know, basically economic diversification. We know that we get a lot of money from the casino, but with the COVID, there's been some exposure, if you will, if you're discussing like the money's coming in. So the need for diversification has never been greater than right now. So what he did is he introduced MMJ Biopharma Cultivation Incorporated. And we actually signed a joint development agreement with MMJ Biopharma Cultivation LLC, a cannabis/pharmaceutical research company pursuing a cultivation license for the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency. And one of the first things that we had discussed prior to the meeting on Saturday is wanted to differentiate, you know, what this means versus what it does not mean. So if you go to look on the presentation, there's two columns. One is what the project is. First bullet point, it's a federal license for research purposes to treat two diseases, one being Huntington's disease, and the second being multiple sclerosis. The second bullet is the only other entity with this license is the University of Mississippi. There's also a great opportunity for community benefits and jobs. They're anticipating anywhere from 40 to 60 jobs when this actually gets up and going. It's also important to note that zero financial investment from the tribe or the Duwatuhuni Corporation. Duwatuhuni will provide the location, and we will just solely serve as the landlord. But more importantly, what it is not, this is not a recreational venture, and does not compete with any tribal members project or ventures. So we wanted to be very clear on that, just to differentiate the two. So a little bit more on MMJ Biopharma Cultivation Incorporated. MMJ Cultivation is our partner company who will lease the land for their project. The proposal is for 500,000 square foot marijuana cultivation and extraction facility, which would be fully indoor with a secure grow. It is capable of producing 40 metric tons or 88,185 pounds of dry marijuana per year. And then MMJ Biopharma has applied for the DEA marijuana growers license and have also applied for a DEA importer permit to bring initial plants from Canada or Jamaica. So they have a really, really strong team that's proposed this to us. There's big pharma vets, FDA clinical trial specialist, and Dwayne Boyce as well. That's really leading the charge in conjunction with our legal team and Watuhuni. So we're really excited for this initiative to come forward. But again, just as that little caveat is that you're going to get more succinct presentation from Owen if you go to the portal. And if there's any trouble, contact Brendan on this. Just a little bit further into it, MMJ Holdings, this is pharmaceutical arm, part of the parent company. The MMJ International Holdings will actually purchase marijuana from MMJ Cultivation, and they will be developing oral gel cap based on marijuana extracts to treat multiple sclerosis and Huntington's, and they have been granted FDA orphan drug designation. There's a lot of information here in regards to MMJ. And we're also going to be setting up, we have a little communication team on the side with Watuhuni. It incorporates, from a PR perspective, from a legal perspective. We're actually designating an email address very shortly that should be rolled out to the community. If there's any questions that they can email it directly to that line, it would be forwarded to the team. Because I don't want to, use up too much time. I want to allow people to ask questions in regards to this. But we're really excited for this initiative. And if anyone's interested in the location, it's off County Route 43 where our current transfer station is. And out of the 38 acres that we currently hold in trust land, the application is for 20 acres for MMJ to utilize. So, we're working right now on what we're going to be doing for the transfer station as well. But again, just to reiterate that there's zero investment in terms of Watuhuni with this. We're merely leasing the land to MMJ. So the opportunities for additional revenue and growth opportunities for us are limitless, and that'll help bring additional monies into the tribe to offset the pure reliance on the casino and MGE. And that's pretty much all I wanted to cover for the MMJ presentation component of it. And if there's any further questions, please let us know.
All right, now we'll go again. That was Siverage's Mohawk Tribal Sub-Chief Benjamin Herne talking about the MMJ presentation, which was offered on Saturday. Again, one of the very thorough presentations by Owen Herne. So again, we're doing Didwatala, our monthly tribal meeting update from Siverage's Mohawk Tribal Council, and doing a summary of the meeting and covering any other files or initiatives through the tribe or other important information they need to pass along to the community. So if you have a question for Tribal Council, phone lines are open 518-358-3427, 613-575-2101. And again, in advance, the program will end at 11:30. And if I don't get to all of the questions, I pass those along to Siverage's Mohawk Tribes Communications Department, and they will address it with council and make sure that they know. So right now, we're going to turn back to Siverage's Mohawk Tribal Chief, Michael Connors. And another item that was discussed was the Small Business Relief Program update. So talking about that as part of this past Saturday's Siverage's Mohawk Tribal Monthly Meeting, we welcome back Tribal Chief Michael Connors.
Irene, Jim Lazor, who was our Director of Economic Development, presented on this program. And it was part of the CARES Act funding that we received last year. We've talked about that several times. Money from the U.S. Treasury as disaster relief for the tribe and the community. But one of the provisions of the grant was the ability to provide grants to small businesses to reimburse the cost of business interruption caused by required closures. And obviously we had a lot of that in our community, in our business community. Last spring, summer, fall, some businesses are still closed today. And that's a real negative impact for our community. With the CARES funding, the tribe implemented a COVID-19 small business relief program, which was intended for eligible businesses in our community. Eligible businesses were those owned by tribal members, physically located on the southern portion of Akwesasne, and were in operation prior to April 7th, 2019, which was 1 year before the required closures. Our economic development department was able to administer 3 rounds of business relief funding. In the first round, 142 applications were approved, and they had also received 7 that they could not approve and were denied for various reasons. In round 2, 97 applications were approved while 22 were denied. And round 3, which just finished up, I believe last week, we had 74 additional businesses that were approved with 30 denials, for a total of 313 businesses who were impacted and provided disaster relief. 52 of the applicants were denied for various reasons. So that shows how vibrant and large our business community is in and around Akwesasne. I don't think anybody had a real accurate number, but now we do, of 313 approved businesses who were assisted with the small business relief program. There were 6 categories of businesses approved that they fell into. One was restaurants, another of gas and convenience stores, arts and culture was a third, retail and professional was a fourth, part-time businesses, and the large enterprises was another. So that's 6 categories of businesses. And through the program, a total of $2,721,000 was distributed in and around our business community and some of our local nonprofit organizations. They were all deeply affected by the pandemic and still are, and we were happy to provide that. Our business community is the backbone of Akwesasne, from small businesses to large businesses, and without them, we all suffer. And they employ roughly 1,600 community members and outside community members directly within the business community. That's separate from the tribal employees and the casino employees. The rounds of checks were mailed in August and November, and the 3rd round wrapped up with distributions last week. They were able to find out that 25% of businesses had DBAs. 75% of the businesses in our community operate without a DBA. They also found out that 55% of businesses in our community were owned by females, which is a great thing, and 45% were owned by males. And our director, Jim Lazar, also in the meeting shared a few testimonials from some of the members of the business community who provided them. And I'm just going to highlight some of them right now. One of them said that Akwesasne has always been well known for its basket, so it's important for me to keep this art alive. That was from a basket maker. Another stated it's important that we all support local businesses as we are here to support the community. Another stated, I appreciate the care and concern that the tribe and executive director's office and economic development office have for our robust community of entrepreneurs and small business owners. I'm more grateful than ever to be a part of our Mohawk business community that so strongly supports local businesses. Another stated, for my family, the business supports all of us. For the community, we are bringing jobs back and the community relies on us for health and fitness supplies. Another stated, I pivoted my business to online retail sales from wholesale. This pivot has increased sales and outreach. Another state, this business supports our whole family. My husband works here with me, so it's our only source of income. We are praying that we could hang in there to keep doing what we love. I was able to offer emotional support and advice to my clients through the whole closure due to COVID. We raised the children of working and studying parents. To date, we have raised 128 children in 8 years, from infants to 3 years old. Those relationships don't end when childcare does. We still support the families after they have moved on with emergency care and respite care for grandparents raising grandchildren. I believe this is important work that needs to continue. Another stated, my business is important to me because it helps feed my family, helps keep a roof over our head and clothes on our backs. Another stated, my business allows people to give gifts that mean something. I've always put a small piece of my heart into each piece I create. They're more than just items, they tell a story. Another said, my business is like one of my babies. It means everything to me. It not only brings happiness to me, but also to the community. We have a friendly atmosphere that is contagious to the community. And without the cafe, I don't know what I would be doing. It brings so much happiness. Another said, Niawa to the Office of Economic Development team for their continued support to local businesses and economy of Akwesasne. Whether the funds go towards my business or towards purchasing at another Akwesasne business, in one way or another, we're all still helping each other during this pandemic. And the last one that was shared, my business is important to me because this is how I make my living. In turn, the impact it makes on my community is that I spend my money locally and have since I had to cut back on shopping at other larger establishments. So those are just some testimonials from our business community who were impacted and affected and provided business relief, showing the importance of the business community in Akwesasne. And that wrapped up the presentation. And there were a couple of questions after the presentation, three that we'll run through. One was, how were some people denied assistance or overlooked? And there were three criteria that were established for the program. And if any business owner has specific concerns about eligibility, they can direct those to Economic Development Director James Lazor at 518-358-2835. Another was, do individuals who own multiple businesses get one check per business? And the answer was no. They were all businesses owned by an individual or an organization were given one single allocation. Another was, why was Zerwaguato not eligible? It is a nonprofit supported by Tribal Council. And the answer to that was Zerwaguato was included in a nonprofit allocation. The nonprofits who submitted were screened for approvals, and all couldn't be approved. We had to approve some and deny some. But the nonprofits who were approved received a single allocation each. And in line with the themes with Chief Thompson and Sub-Chief Herne, we direct everybody to look at the members only portal. There's a lot of information on there. The entire tribal meeting is on there, and each of the detailed presentations with a lot more detail than we provided and we're able to provide today are on there for all community members to access. And again, if anybody has troubles, please contact Communications Department and they can walk you through accessing the portal. Now,
Again, that is Savage's Mohawk Tribal Chief Michael Connors. We're talking with Tribal Council, providing an update for the community with regards to this past Saturday's Tribal Monthly Meeting. And now we've got some reminders for everyone who would like to address those for the community regarding a couple of items.
I can take those. We had two reminders. A reminder to the community that there's no winter fuel allocation program this year. And that normally is happening right now. We would be in the middle of our winter fuel applications and approvals and disbursements. But obviously, due to the COVID pandemic and lack of funds from the casino, we're unable to provide that this year. But that was made up in the Emergency Disaster Relief Program, which we rolled out in December. We were able to provide an enhanced disaster relief that was intended to cover for the make up for the loss of the fuel program. So that's why we received enhanced checks in December for disaster relief. And the second reminder or announcement was that the Dewatahuni board has 3 new members which were appointed by Tribal Council. One member is Daniel Garo, who is a tribal member. Another is Brock Arnold, who's a tribal member. And the third is Jacob Voynes. And I believe the Dewatahuni board may be doing a announcement for each of the new members to the board with their qualifications, their background, their experience, and their expertise. And we just have those 2 reminders and announcements. And also an announcement that the next monthly meeting will be February 6th via Zoom with Chief Thompson as the chair. And that wrapped up the monthly meeting last week.
All right, again, talking with Tribal Council, we're going to get to some questions now, and we will go to our phone lines. So once again, I let everybody know we're going to be wrapping up the program at 11:30, and if we do not get to your question, I will assure you that I will get that to the Communications Department, and they will pass it on. So we'll start off with our first question. For transparency, can council release documents and contracts related to the transfer station as well as MMJ? So again, that question for transparency, can council release documents and contracts related to the transfer station and MMJ?
So the process for requesting documentation, there's an established protocol there. You go through what's the name of the department, Mike? Do you know offhand? Lillian Bartlett is the director.
It's the records office.
Records
Open
office.
records.
The open records policy. Pursuant to the open records policy, there is a process by which application is made to see any of the documentation that's available. There are some documentation that is not available, though, and that has to do with certain business practices. These agreements, I think it would be appropriate to put that request in there. It would have to be processed there, because that would be a try. We can only provide what we're agreement in as well. Some of the documentation with regards to MMJ is theirs and theirs only, as it's their business. We've gone through some of these requests previously, and there are certain documents and certain agreements that cannot be provided by virtue of the nature of the business that the parties are embarking upon. So they're sensitive in nature, and some of the agreements occur while in negotiation on other things. So there are documents that are available to the public, and then documents that are not. All I can say is I would encourage whoever has an interest in that to put a request for an open records policy application. We'll put a request in and see where it goes.
Yeah, and that policy is set in place through a referendum vote through the 2013 Procedures Act. It was set in stone then, and the community voted on it, and it was part of the Procedures Act. And also items with the Wet'suwet'en are not part of the Procedures Act or the Open Records Ordinance. Open Records Policy has the Wet'suwet'en is a corporate arm over the tribe.
All right, so continuing on, another question a listener has: who paid for the vault located within the transfer station? Who paid for the vault located within the transfer station?
That was actually MMJ themselves. So when the joint agreement was satisfied and signed off on, that was one of the parameters of putting the vault inside the transfer station as well. They did other things as well, like they started to install surveillance cameras, trying to prep it and get ready for the oncoming opportunity to get the approval of the DA license. But yeah, MMJ actually funded that.
All right, our next question: does the tribe have an $8 million deficit? If so, second part of this question, why is the tribe spending money to relocate the transfer station? Shouldn't we be saving money during these times? So they're asking about an $8 million deficit that tribal council is in for the Siverages Mohawk tribe, rather. And if so, why is the tribe spending money to relocate the transfer station?
We do have a budgeted deficit of just over $8 million for 2021 this year. Yes, we do have an $8 million deficit budgeted. And MMJ is providing up to $1 million in funding to relocate the transfer station. So they're providing substantial funding for that. And we need to invest, or they need to help us. They are helping us invest to move that transfer station for the future, for economic diversification. We all enter council with diversification plans. And this is one of the initiatives that we were able to move forward with. And so we have opportunities to provide additional funding. We've learned in the past 10 months that we can't rely on the casino because the casino is not guaranteed to always be there. And if the casino is not able to provide funding in the future, we're able to provide additional funding through the MMJ initiative.
I think we have to make it clear too that if MMJ does not obtain their DEA license, then there is no project and there is no relationship the transfer station doesn't have to move and all of that, that goes away. So we're still in a waiting game to see if they actually will, because there's 33 other applications in for the same license. And hopefully MMJ gets it and we can move forward with diversifying our income to the tribe. But if they don't, then all of this is a moot conversation.
We can stand still and wait and do nothing and wait for the casino funding to start again, which is not guaranteed for the rest of this year, or we can take steps for the future of our community to provide additional revenues, which we are doing.
It's also worth noting that, you know, the company that MMJ, that company being MMJ, approached us, they're really under no obligation to be here or to offer this opportunity to us. So it is a bit of a quid pro quo. However, you know, the fact that they sought us out, really it was contingent or really mainly having to do with the patent initiative that we embarked upon, that resulted in a profit for the tribe and raised our profile in the business area. So it was it's really as a result of that they approached us on this, and you know, it's all contingent on the license, the granting of the federal license. If it is granted, you know, we have the potential to really get away from our reliance on one stream. And you know, the key word here is diversification, and I think all other council members have hit on it. You know, to be reliant solely on one source of revenue is really an Achilles heel, and it's one that we can't afford to do. We can't afford to be reliant only on one thing. So, you know, this and hopefully this will be one in a series of initiatives that will continue to diversify the economy of Akwesasne in a positive manner. So.
All right, so continuing on, Chief Thompson, this tribal member would like to know if your family owns the land of the proposed new site of the transfer station, and is the tribe purchasing it from your family, and is that a conflict of interest, or are you donating land?
So the answer to the first two questions, I believe, would be no, which renders everything following moot. My family.
The community owns that land to the tribe.
All right, next question. We'll go with maybe Tribal Chief Beverly Cook on this one. Tribal Chief Cook, for the vaccine rollout, diabetics, are they considered a chronic health condition?
Yeah, they would be considered in a higher risk category, because we know that people with diabetes who have contracted COVID don't always fare as well. And and it's definitely a chronic illness. So though the people who have been diagnosed with diabetes should definitely call and let the clinic know that they are interested in getting the vaccine, and they'll be put into the queue according to the category, and also depending on their age, could move them up even a little bit higher.
All right, another question having to do with COVID. Are health officials keeping track of those getting infected with COVID-19, whether they are smokers or non-smokers?
That's a good question. I just have to assume that they are, but I can't say that for sure. Many of the people that go to the clinic are I'm sorry, that's me. Somebody's at the door. what was I saying? So many of the people that come into the clinic are known by the staff there and their medical conditions, and some of the providers are actually encouraging some of their patients to get vaccinated. But in terms of whether you smoke or not, there is an intake form that you fill out, and I believe it asks you that on the form that you fill out prior to getting the test. I could be mistaken because I just went to the clinic a couple times and had to fill out all kinds of forms, so I'm not sure which one went to which encounter.
Okay.
But we can find that out.
Well, this person says they've noticed that non-smokers are getting it and smokers are not. And
Oh,
is smoking somehow preventing it?
no. No, it isn't.
All right. So as we continue,
Sorry.
that's okay. Another question, are you doing a call out for medical marijuana? Does the tribe have the authority to issue licenses under tribal ordinances?
So yes, we're currently in the process. The referendum was had on medical marijuana and recreational, actually, which passed. The medical marijuana, we're impaneling the board now, and we're shooting for, hopefully in the very near future, having that being rolled out. The board will be in charge of seeing the rollout and doing the applications and setting up the office, the cannabis office. We're hoping that that occurs fairly quickly and smoothly. So we're shooting for later this spring is the target date. On that note, I would say that we have submitted, there's a copy of the draft hemp regulations, production regulations is available for membership and can be viewed on the tribal members portal located at the tribe's website at ssrmt-nsn.gov. The draft regulations are now available to review during a 30-day comment period for public input and feedback. The tribal members can submit their written comments by 5 p.m. on Thursday, February 4th, 2021. So there's three things that they're moving in tandem, and we are shooting for those to occur hopefully by spring, early summer. We're really pressing the issue, but as you know, COVID really the pandemic threw a monkey wrench in everything. So you know, we're working the best we can to get those regulations up and running and roll out the full regime on it so that people can apply and submit their business plans and go into business.
All right, another question. Will Tribal Council defend medical marijuana licenses the same way they protect tobacco licenses?
So the medical marijuana licenses are analogous to gaming. That's the closest that we can come, that we can lay it down. But the short answer to the question is yes. Within the context of federal Indian law, the fact that the state has implemented and regulated medical marijuana stands for the proposition that the tribe is fully capable of doing so as well, and it's recognized. So yeah.
Another question, why can't elders living on the northern portion sign up or reserve the COVID-19 vaccine? Caller says they're on the rolls and the tribe receives money for them.
I don't know that they are not. Grand Chief had said that they were going to be obtaining vaccine within the next couple weeks, and that they would be rolling out in priority. I believe their elders are at the top of the list. And I think because we're not getting as much of the vaccine that we had anticipated in the beginning, that's why people are sticking to their priority levels. If there's an urgent need, there's nothing preventing anyone from calling the clinic and speaking with one of the providers to inquire. I just know that they're trying to be as orderly as possible about the rollout, and the initial priority were the healthcare frontline workers, because they're the ones caring for people. And if they lose their staff, then that could be harmful to the community as a whole. So I think those questions are best asked if you call the providers who are in charge of rolling out the vaccine. But I know that MCA will be getting theirs very shortly.
All right, turning to another question. Will the tribe open a recreational marijuana dispensary under the Wet'suwet'en Corporation if it becomes legal in New York State?
So the tribe is on, is currently developing, looking at it and developing regs towards recreational. We're aware that the recreational, the legal landscape is changing all around us. The initiative it will not be through the Wet'suwet'en though. The initiative will be through the tribal, under the auspices of the tribal government, and we will regulate and not necessarily participate as a market participant, but regulate the industry is what's being contemplated. The referendum that has been had on it has passed. We are looking at developing regulations now, and there will be public meetings forthcoming to review those and gain comment on those regs when that time is appropriate. So we're working on it.
And I also want to add on to that as well, Chief Thompson, that Owen explains a component of that directly in his presentation from Saturday. So again, check it out on our portal. He actually talks about language that was put into the joint agreement, identifying and specifying that they will not go into the recreational realm whatsoever.
All right. Yep, sorry.
I just wanted to go back to that other question about, we often hear people say, well, they use our numbers to get money or to get funding for community members. And I just wanted to clarify that the vaccine is coming through Indian Health Service. So Indian Health Service uses a formula to determine what our user population is. And the formula chronically is the cause for underfunding of our health services. And so the misconception that our numbers, our enrollment numbers are used for funding is, it's a mistaken assumption. So there's the formula for Indian Health Service, which dictates how much funding we get and how much money we get for that. That does not go by our enrollment numbers. Also, the census is another instrument that the government uses to give us funding, and the census has been also chronically undercounted so that we get less money than we would if everybody participated in the census. They do not use our enrollment numbers. And also, there was one other, the CARES Act money that we got was based on households. They did not go by our enrollment numbers. So I think I just wanted to get that out there, that there is an assumption that our enrollment numbers are used and nobody recognizes them. Even though we constantly are trying to persuade them that they should use our enrollment numbers, they don't. And we had to, even with the cigarette allotment, we had to go into a big discussion with them about using our enrollment numbers because they were using the census numbers. So we're not getting funding for everybody that's on our rolls is what I want to say. Thank you.
All right, so continuing on, this caller says Tribal Council controls the members that appear on Zoom. And this would have been, I guess, for the tribal monthly meeting. So Tribal Council controls the members that appear on Zoom. And this caller feels that they were, lack of a better word, putting down some members last meeting on Zoom just for asking questions.
Do they mean that who was putting down was, are they saying that the council or the chair was putting down a member, or?
I think that that's how that's written and how it, yeah, should be presented.
Okay, well, I chaired most of the meeting. Chief Cook jumped in and chaired a little bit while I had to jump away, but I may be wrong, but I don't feel I put down anybody during the meeting. At the end, I abruptly cut it off as we were adjourning. The chair does that. The chair adjourns the meeting and it's over when the chair says. Other than that, I don't know if there's any specific examples. There's examples the other way, but I can't pinpoint an example.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I didn't perceive that either. And again, the meeting for anybody to go and actually sit through and watch if you'd like. You know, and I'm sorry that they perceive it that way. And that's certainly not the intention. You know, we're aware that the elderly population of Akwesasne might not be the most tech savvy. I mean, I know that I'm not the most tech savvy. It's kind of a minor miracle that I'd be sitting here right now participating in the Zoom Zoom call. But it's, you know, I think that, you know, we're aware people are not, you know, spending inordinate amount of time in cyberspace and aren't completely savvy with these things. We're not ourselves. So, you know, we try and be as diplomatic as we can, and we try and really put a lot of information out there on how-tos. So the intent is to really educate and not necessarily to ridicule or have it be perceived any other negative way.
Yeah, community members can also reach out to us directly if they feel a certain way or if they feel they were treated a certain way. We're all available. They can call our phones, get our numbers, Facebook inbox us, email us. We can have a Zoom meeting directly with them one-on-one. We're not in the most desirable situation. None of us want to be communicating and meeting on Zoom, but that's a situation we're in. We didn't have any meetings for several months, and then we were able to start them. It's not their most desirable situation, but that's where we are today.
Well, even if we weren't on Zoom, there's an order for how the meeting is conducted so that we don't get too far off track. We don't go way over time because there's a time limit according to the Procedures Act. However, sometimes people have other commitments, they have other things, there's family issues going on or whatever. And when the chair adjourns the meeting, and maybe this is what is spurring the comment, everybody has control over their own mute button and can, you know, pose a question. There's on the side, there's a chat capability where you can type in your question. There's a Q&A capability where you can ask a question. So if, you know, sometimes you forget what you want to ask. And so if you type it in, then the question is there and the moderator sees it. Everybody has control over their own mute button, but when the meeting is adjourned, sometimes we can take an additional question. You know, sometimes I'll do that, or one of the other, whoever's chairing the meeting will do that, but sometimes we have to go. And sometimes there's a reason that someone has to leave and it's over, you know, that's it. And like you said, Brendan is always available, or our office phone, everybody knows our phone number. Staff can take the question and then convey it to us. So that may have been what they were referencing, was that we just had to go. There was some things going on. So.
All right, so I hate to wrap up on that note, but we are coming to 11:30 now, so I'm going to stop the questions. Anything that I did not get to, I'm going to pass along to Brendan White, who is the Director of Communications for the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe, and we will wrap up with closing comments. We're going to start with Tribal Chief Eric Thompson.
Thank you, Reen. Yanko akuzaste duatna neda medori wandu ni gido zwana sakto ge onzo wezege tano zawada ni guno lage chinichi jigaknu izowa do yanda agilo zahi yana gido zwana sakto ge onzo wezege yung wato hunjo ni ji zawada garita de skana zona tunyo so negative wa to ga yanda ke skana zona tunyo yanko.
Yeah, well, let's go with Tribal Sub-Chief Benjamin Herne.
I just really want to take this time to send my appreciation to you, Reen, for allowing me to come on here with the chiefs as well. We have some initiatives rocking on the Duwatahuni side, and again, that it just plays into the fact that we've seen some holes in our gaming revenues for the past year with our COVID. So we appreciate the patience of the community, and we're going to provide as much as that we can. And as soon as we get that email address out for our MMJ initiative, I'll share it. That way people can directly contact us and our legal team as well. Otherwise, we just hope the community stays safe and just stay tuned for more information from council moving forward.
All right, we'll go with Tribal Chief Beverly Cook.
Thank you, Reen. I just wanted to acknowledge the hardship that this is for everyone. And I wanted to let the community know that we appreciate what they are going through emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and physically, the whole gamut. We are not immune to any of the experiences. We're sharing in that across the board. We all know and love someone, that's been infected or, is not feeling well, is sick and struggling. We have friends that are really having a hard time with this. We ourselves sometimes look at each other through a Zoom meeting and have to say, I think I'm depressed, or I think I'm anxious, or I think I'm feeling some kind of way. And we help to lift each other up through that and to encourage each other along. So every week it seems like there's something extra sad that's happened, or extra tragic, or losing somebody that you knew your entire life and all of a sudden you're gone. It's affecting everybody. And I know that one of the things that we didn't mention, that Ontario was going to be going into a shutdown. And so because of that, a portion of our community could be affected by that. And I saw where Akwesasne's 24-hour auction was going to go offline. And I was like, oh no, what are we going to do? Because, it's something to occupy your mind, and it's kind of exciting. And I haven't been able to win one bid yet, but it gives you something to hang on to. So I just want to encourage everybody to really check in on one another. And, we have to make big sacrifices during this thing by not being able to visit and not being able to sit with one another and hug each other and all of that. We're all suffering, we're all suffering from it. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and to point out that there are people that are sitting by the phone waiting for calls for anyone that needs help. And on our website and on our Facebook page, there's numbers for mental health and addiction and violence especially. Everybody is being pushed to the limit and over. And there's some pretty serious negative things happening inside of the community that need attention, and we're aware of it all and doing the best that we can to address it. So just wanted to let everybody know none of us are alone in this. You know, we're all going through the same thing.
Thank you. And we'll wrap up with Tribal Chief Michael Connors.
Thanks, Reen. Just a reminder to everybody to stick to your bubble as much as possible. Anytime you step outside your bubble or let somebody else in your bubble, it just increases your risk and everybody's risks. Thank you to all employees, tribal employees, casino employees, MCA employees, frontline employees, anybody employed in our community. Thank you to everybody for everything they've done for the past 10 months and continue to do until we come out of this state of emergency. Same for all of our community members. Everybody's going through a tough time, like Chief Cook talked about. And just a reminder to be kind, be compassionate, and let's all be good people. Ellen.
Now go. Thank you all for joining us today for this monthly update. We'll see you next time. 97.3 KLM from the heart of Akwesasne.